No. No, all due respect, this is not literature. These are barely coherent thoughts printed on paper and bound for people who want to give off the appearance that they're reading on the subway. But they don't want to actually read. They don't want to... You cannot fake reading real literature. You have to exert energy for a real book. You should be sweating while reading a real book. You shouldn't have to lick your thumb to flip the page. That thumb should be sweaty enough to do it itself. Real books make you sprint long distances. Marathons. And then they knock the wind out of you, but you keep running because that back cover is the only thing that can give you solace. This class is called English literature, not English thoughts, not English nonsense. So give us literature with a capital L. So give us James Baldwin, give us Bradbury, give us Edgar Allan Poe, Nora Zeal Hurston. Otherwise, you're robbing us of the education we came here for. Is that what you want to do?
Hello again. Let's get into it.
Yes, I'm ready.
All right, so we've got no is your first sentence. So I wonder what could you give yourself, knowing that this isn't coming from a play, but is something that Jake wrote for you. What could be a good line before, if you're talking to your professor and your reply is no, and then this whole argument, what could be the line before?
We're going to read this because it talks about everyone's experience, some sort of crazy generalization of something that's like only the white narrative and perspective.
So if the repeated thing here is real book, what's the new information about real book? So you're saying, one, I've got to exert energy for a real book. You've got to sweat while reading a real book. So that might be two. And then I think that you shouldn't have to lick your thumb to flip the page. That thumb should be sweaty enough to do that, is just a continuation of that, like how sweaty you should be, mostly because it doesn't say real book again. And it's still to do with sweat. Then we see real books again. So this is 3 sprint long distances. And then 4 knock the wind out of you. Because we have then they. So the they is still referring to the real books.
Because then that like progression makes more sense. The momentum of it, I think, is clearer that way, yeah.
These are all examples of what real books should make you do. If you're at the top saying this is not real literature, you're then contrasting that with this is what real literature is.
No. All due respect, no. This is not literature. These are barely coherent thoughts printed on paper and bound for people who want to give off the appearance that they're reading on the subway, but they don't want to actually read.
Great, let's start again. So yes, you've hit all of the things that we have marked, but I need to hear the contrast between they want to give off the appearance that they're reading, but they don't want to actually read.
Okay.
So maybe you're going to go up in pitch and go down in pitch, or the opposite of that. And then do 2 different things with those first 2 no's.
No. All due respect, no. This is not literature. These are barely coherent thoughts printed on paper and bound for people who want to give off the appearance that they're reading on the subway, but don't want to actually read.
Yes, keep going.
They don't want to... You cannot fake reading real literature. You have to exert energy for a real book. You should be sweating while reading a real book. You shouldn't have to lick your thumb to flip the page. That thumb should be sweaty enough to do that itself. Real books make you sprint long distances. Marathons. They knock the wind out of you. But you keep running because the back cover is the only thing that can give you solace. Do you remember the panel with 3 or 4 of them were like, yeah, I mean, I don't see any problem. Like if a white man wants to come in and do like a song that was written for a Black woman, like if a white man wants to do a song from Dreamgirls or The Wiz or whatever, and he can sing it. Everyone's like, how can these people who have been in this industry for like 50 years believe that? And I just like reading the last line of this monologue, like instantly sent me back to them being like, hey, so like I get it. Like just because someone can hit a note doesn't mean that they should be like, for audition's sake or for the sake of trying to get a job, taking on circumstances that were like contextually written for like an identity that's different than theirs. There's an insensitivity to that. And they were like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You're this, you're that. And I went, well, you're wrong, but okay. Like,
oh, I remember that. And I think Jake was there for that too. So that makes sense while he like understands how you would put together an argument where you're like, let me put it in other terms for you, that what you're actually doing is appropriating Black experience. Are you sure that's what you want to do?
Let me know. Right. Just like, you tell me if like you're still cool with that.
So that's why I feel like he really hit the kind of nail on the head with how you would structure an argument. He could hear your voice and know, you know, having been present for some arguments that you have had with folks. I love it.
Yeah. Present all the information and then go, but like, you tell me.
Yeah. Like, are you sure? Let me read this back to you, and then you tell me if I got this right.
Yes. Because in everyday life, I get into the habit of talking so quickly. Like, I talk so quickly, and like, I'm like, oh, this, and I'm moving so quickly. So like, being like, okay, now make your point, but don't rush anything.
But I actually think that when you were having to speak off the cuff at that panel, I don't think you spoke quickly. There was nothing like loud and fast about it, which is, I think, that maybe if you were talking to your peers, that could be fine.
Also, what we talked about, going through this and getting it to a place where it's that personal.
Maybe you have to give yourself some given circumstances where, right, like what could be at stake that feels as huge as, you know, somebody preventing you from getting work in the business. It's still that important, and your personal investment in this is still that high stakes for you that you can't sit and be complicit.
Right. Once the stakes are high enough that it's like, no, this is personal. Like, this is personal, and how do you do what you came here to do, but not like fuck everything up, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's why I encourage actors to do this degree of physicalization while they're workshopping it, because it also helps you memorize it. You know that you have 2 list items and then a side, but then like memorization wise, you know what that 3rd list item is. So like, you don't have to really think about it that hard.
Yeah.
So you're creating ownership as you're memorizing it, so that the words start to feel like your own because you understand the trajectory of the argument. I would encourage you to be more intentional with raising the pitch, especially because within your own speaking voice, you have a bigger pitch range than I would say most people do, which is amazing. And you feel more comfortable using that pitch range. But I think when the words don't belong to you, you immediately limit yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want you to take up more space with this. I want you to be as expressive in pitch as you are in your everyday speaking voice. And then, just for that last list, I feel like each of those authors, they feel different right now, but I don't feel like it's building. So I would just encourage you to go again with what you're doing with pitch, so that when you get to otherwise, it feels like the climax of that argument. Okay. And I'm just going to do it one more time and we'll call it a day.
Yes, I'm ready. All due respect, no, this is not literature. These are barely coherent thoughts printed on paper and bound for people who want to give off the appearance that they're reading on the subway, but they don't want to actually read. They don't want to. You cannot fake reading real literature. You have to exert energy for a real book. You should be sweating while reading a real book. You shouldn't have to lick your thumb to flip the page. That thumb should be sweaty enough to do that itself. Real books make you sprint long distances, marathons. Then they knock the wind out of you, but you keep running because the back cover is the only thing that can give you solace. This class is called English literature, not English thoughts, not English nonsense. So give us literature with a capital L. Give us James Baldwin. Give us Bradbury. Give us Edgar Allan Poe, Zora Neale Hurston. Otherwise, you're robbing us of the education we came here for. Is that what you want to do? Yes. Yeah. I felt it that time.
Yeah, for sure.
I felt like we kind of got there closer that time. I think that like one of the biggest things I struggled with in senior year and then like definitely post-grad is like giving myself the permission to take up space, both like as a person, but then also like in my work, the voices of people who try to be like, oh, you can't take up that much space. Like you need to like tamp down what it is that like you do or what you're capable of, in some ways got to me. And working on this again and recognizing that vocally in pitch or tempo or anything like that, because when things are personal for me as a person, I will take up space and nobody could say anything or do anything that would stop that. And so I think for me, it's allowing my work on monologues or a song or anything to sort of go to that place of make it always personal for me, so that I don't limit myself and I don't put a lid on like how much space I can take up vocally in text or vocally in a song or anything like that. I think that's definitely the biggest thing for me. Even if it is like nerve-wracking or intimidating, that's when the best things happen.
Yeah, that's so huge. You take up space as a person in a way that would be a shame for you not to do in your own work. And that just, it says so much to like the narratives that we tell ourselves about when we're allowed to take up space. And man, you'd be doing the world such a huge disservice to not take up space in all aspects, Romello.
It's working against the conditioning I've had to be like so in control of everything, that I think part of me sometimes is like, oh, like what if it's messy or like this or that? And I think like letting go of that imperfection, it's harder for me to tell myself to let go of that mindset. And I think like when it just sort of happens for me is when something's in life or working on it is so personal that it doesn't matter to me anymore. Yeah. I'm like, I don't care about what this might look like or come off as to anybody, because there's something affecting me or resonating with me so deeply that all that matters is I'm communicating that first and foremost.
Yeah, and taking that same kind of growth mindset. I mean, that's really like the definition of growth mindset. I'm okay with this being messy because it doesn't have to be perfect. Like that's actually where we grow, is when we start to allow ourselves to take risks and allow it to not be a finished product right from the get-go.
Exactly. Yeah. Breakthroughs. Da-da-da.
I love it.
No. All due respect, no. This is not literature. These are barely coherent thoughts printed on paper and bound for people who want to give off the impression that they're reading on the subway, but they don't want to actually read. You cannot fake reading real literature. You have to exert energy for a real book. You should be sweating while reading a real book. You shouldn't have to lick your thumb to flip the page. That thumb should be sweaty enough to do that itself. Real books make you sprint long distances, marathons. Then they knock the wind out of you, but you keep running because the back cover is the only thing that can give you solace. This class is called English literature, not English thoughts, not English nonsense. So give us literature with a capital L. Give us James Baldwin, give us Bradbury, give us Edgar Allan Poe, Zora Neale Hurston. Otherwise, you're robbing us of the education we came here for. Is that what you want to do?